It was October 24th, 1593, a restless night in the walled city of Manila, capital of the Spanish East Indies. The air was heavy with heat and anticipation. The Philippines, far from the heart of the Spanish Empire, stood as a lonely outpost, a fragile bridge between Asia and the Americas. In the governor's palace, soldiers of the royal guard stood at attention. Among them was a young officer named Gil Pérez, who was disciplined, loyal to the crown, and served under Governor-General Gómez Perez das Marigas, a man determined to expand Spain's power into the Spice Islands. That night, Das Marigas had set sail with a fleet bound for the Moluccas, the rich cluster of islands that controlled the global clove and nutmeg trade. Spain and Portugal were locked in a silent rivalry over who would control the lucrative routes of the East, but tragedy struck before the fleet even cleared Philippine waters. Mutinous Chinese oarsmen, the very men hired to row the galleys, turned their weapons on the governor as he slept. They killed him instantly, ending his mission before it began. Back in Manila, confusion rippled through the palace. Rumors spread faster than orders. Gil Pérez stood his post that night as tension thickened in the humid air. He later said he felt lightheaded, his vision narrowing as exhaustion overcame him. He closed his eyes for just a moment. When he opened them, everything had changed. The sun was blazing overhead. He was standing still in full uniform but surrounded by strangers. This wasn't Manila. He was in a vast plaza, surrounded by grand stone buildings and soldiers in slightly different armor. The language was the same Castilian Spanish, but the accents, the faces, and the air were not. It was in Mexico City. Confused and alarmed, the local guards approached him. They noticed his uniform bore insignia. They didn't recognize the insignia of a colonial force stationed across the ocean in the Philippines. When questioned, Perez answered calmly, "I am a soldier of the Palace Guard in Manila, serving under Governor Das Marigas. He was assassinated this morning by mutineers." The officers exchanged glances. The claim was impossible. The Philippines were more than 9,000 miles away. No ship had arrived from Manila in months. And no word, no rumor, no messenger had brought such news. They arrested him on suspicion of desertion or witchcraft. He was taken to the barracks and interrogated repeatedly, but his story never changed. He described Manila's streets, the governor's residence, even the make of the Chinese oarsmen's galleys. Every detail was precise, too precise for fantasy. Weeks passed. Gil remained in prison as guards and interrogators remained skeptical of his story. They refused to believe him. Then, months later, a galleon finally docked at Acapulco, carrying news from the Philippines. The crew confirmed the unbelievable. Governor Das Marigas had been killed by Chinese mutineers on October 24th, the very same date. Gil Pérez claimed he was guarding the palace. Officials were stunned. The impossible had been verified. The soldier from Manila had spoken truthfully about an event no one in Mexico could yet have known. After his release, some accounts say Perez was sent back to the Philippines aboard the next returning galleon. Others claim he remained in Mexico for years, quietly serving as a symbol of God's mysterious will. No one knows for sure what became of him. To understand why this story endured for centuries, we need to understand the world that birthed it. In the late 1500s, Spain's empire encircled the globe. From Madrid to Mexico, from Peru to Manila, its trade routes carried gold, silver, silk, and souls. The Manila-Capulaco galleons were the arteries of that empire's massive ships that braved the Pacific once or twice a year. Each journey took months, enduring storms, starvation, and pirates. News, by contrast, moved at the speed of wind and wave. A letter written in Manila in October might not reach Madrid until the following spring. In a world where distance ruled time, for a man to travel from Manila to Mexico overnight was not just miraculous, it was unthinkable. The Catholic Church was the ultimate authority in such matters. The Spanish Inquisition had long been active in New Spain, ready to investigate anything that smelled of heresy or sorcery. Yet Gil Pérez's story baffled even them. He was no heretic, no lunatic. His faith was firm, his answers consistent. The only thing out of place was reality itself. Some theologians speculated it was divine intervention, perhaps a saintly translocation. Others whispered of the devil's tricks or an angelic test. But there was no clear explanation, and in time, the Inquisition simply dropped the case. For centuries, Perez's story circulated through the empire's folklore, part cautionary tale, part baffling mystery. When the Spanish crown eventually lost control of its colonies, the legend survived, passed down in taverns and among sailors of the Pacific. By the 19th century, European writers rediscovered it and called it the earliest teleportation account in history. In Paris and Madrid, spiritualists cited it as proof of bilocation, the ability for a person to appear in two places at once, a phenomenon even some saints were rumored to possess. By the 20th century, it was reframed again now as a story of time travel, or perhaps a glitch in spacetime. Each generation reshaped the myth for its own fears and fascinations. To the faithful, it was divine. To scientists, impossible. To storytellers, perfect. Historians have searched for the origins of the tale. Some found fragments in 17th-century colonial records and writings by Spanish chroniclers like Fray Gaspar de San Agustin. Others note that by the time it reached Europe, the story had already blurred between Manila and Mexico, a myth carried by wind and wave, shaped by constant retelling. It may have begun as a misunderstood report of a soldier's desertion, but its core details, the date, the governor's death, the impossible timing, never faded. Modern skeptics call it an example of Empire-era folklore, a story born from isolation, faith, and the vast, intimidating distances of the Spanish world. And yet, like all enduring mysteries, it resists an explanation that is too neat and tidy. Because for every plausible theory, there remains that single, impossible detail. How could a man in the 16th century know of an event that had not yet crossed the ocean? More than 400 years later, the story of Gil Pérez endures because it straddles the line between history and impossibility. It reminds us that the early modern world was a place where science and faith blurred, where the unexplained could coexist with empire and order. A world vast enough for the miraculous to hide inside the ordinary. Whether Perez was a victim of confusion, a miracle of God, or a traveler through something we still don't understand, his legend continues to echo through time, from the colonial records of Spain to the internet archives of today. Maybe he was simply a soldier who nodded off at his post, and the rest was a story born from distance and wonder. Or maybe, for one night in 1593, the world folded on, one man slipped between its seams. If you enjoy exploring stories like this, remember to like, subscribe, and stay curious. Another mystery unravels soon on NovusThread.